Welcome back to the Greg Struss Show. I'm Greg Struss, coming to you almost live and direct here from Cable Television City in the west side of Chicago. And I am grateful that you're tuning in tonight for what will hopefully be another entertaining and informative program. We were talking before the show tonight. That's amazing. We kind of have a student here tonight who was taking some classes, and we got to talking before the show, and it's fascinating, the people that you meet and the conversations we have before we go on the air. And I want to talk tonight about, keeping my side of the street clean. All right, there's an old saying in recovery work, keeping my side of the street clean. That can mean a number of things. And it usually boils down to having a resentment. And we'll get into more about that a little bit further down the line, because talking about resentments, recently there was a march on the expressway, blocking the expressway from a holiday weekend. People were marching because of the protesting brutality of police, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm thinking to myself, if this is all about not hating, not being angry, not having resentments, I think you could have thought of something different than blocking the highway where people have to go to work and coming home from vacation. So I have a feeling some people had some resentments and now want to keep their side of the street clean, as they say. Why is that important? And today, why is that important when we listen to nothing but the negativity on the news? Keeping my side of the street clean means that I'm focusing on me and not getting caught up in what other people are doing, what other people are saying, because part of groupthink is that I have to think a certain way, right? And if I don't think a certain way and I don't believe a certain way, then I really don't matter on a certain level, which is kind of goes against the grain of why we work on getting better, right? Getting better in our lives. So we recover from a hopeless state of mind and being, whether we're alcoholic or whether we're, addicted to drugs or drama, or what are some of the other things? Sex, internet porn. So when I'm keeping my side of the street clean, I'm essentially trying to remain, kind of having that serenity and being sane instead of being insane and being in those bad habits. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight as well. And I just wanted to kind of talk about something, that's current events and thinking about, well, when I make a statement, what statement am I making? And really, who am I influencing? And who am I, and in making that statement, who am I trying to convince? Am I convincing myself? Am I convincing others? What's that about? So it's kind of like that slippery slope. If I'm keeping my side of the street clean, I'm focusing on me. Doesn't matter what the other guy's making. It's what I make and what's important. And I think that's important as we start to think about getting better in our lives, whether that's a job, whether it's quitting a bad habit, or quitting people. Now, I was talking before the show. I said how I had to one day just kind of go like that. And in my life, people have fired me too, for whatever reason. And it kind of hurts when that happens, whether it's, we break up with somebody, we're essentially firing them from our lives. Or if they decide that they don't want to date us anymore, they fire us from our lives, and there's fallout for that too. But as long as I'm keeping my side of the street clean, I'm going to be okay. And we'll get into depth with that in a little bit. But I was enjoying, before the show, we were talking about like shows that I had done, and I've been thinking about some things that have happened in my life as I turned 50 recently, and some things are a little more clear than what they were several years back. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to do that next step, whatever, I'm ready to go to that next level in my life. And it's taken a long time. And I was talking about how several years ago that I had just kind of stopped talking to people one day. So I got into that like little self-isolation. And that sometimes can be a good place to be and sometimes not a good place to be. Because if I'm isolating, I'm not talking about ideas. I'm not talking about, getting energy and moving beyond a certain way of thought and how I'm feeling about myself and my life at that point in time. So that's another thing that kind of came clear to me. And you know what? Sometimes time takes time. It takes time to overcome, and it takes time to heal. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Anyway, I am glad that you're joining us. I'm Greg. This is The Greg Struss Show. And we are reinventing community television here from the west side of Chicago. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We're talking with Chris, who's a member of AMA. Explain what your organization's about.
We're the American Marketing Association. Basically, it's a club here at school, just like the finance club or the accounting club. You don't have to be in marketing to be in it. It's majors. I'm a marketing major myself. We have like management majors, accounting majors, and we have like dinners on Tuesday nights in Grand Rapids. Mama dinners, West Michigan American Marketing Association. And we're professionals, like marketers from different businesses go there. We listen to keynote speakers and just have a dinner, and you go and like kind of network with people around the community. And it looks good in your resume when you get done with school too to see you're a member of the AMA, so it helps with jobs.
Have you ever thought about becoming a public speaker?
Welcome back to The Greg Struss Show. I'm Greg Struss. And you can watch us on youtube.com with the search words The Greg Struss Show, where you'll see a plethora from 35 years of shows. 1983, so we have our 35th coming up from the first time we did our first show at Thornton Township High School in Harvey, Illinois. We had one of the first and only high schools that had media. And this was in 1967. And I remember when I was in high school, we had a news show that had been on ever since that time. It was called Getting Around. It opened up to the Beach Boys. And then it was said, now let's get around. And then the anchors would come on, and I did that show for 3 years and learned about news writing, reporting, et cetera, which they don't teach anymore, I don't think. So anyway, 35 years ago. And it all started at Thornton Township High School in Harvey, Illinois. And I've been thinking about going there and checking the digs out from where I began, because sometimes I think when we get to a certain milestone in our life, that sometimes going back, not to relive it, but just to kind of experience that energy of what that moment was like. And I remember when I walked into that studio for the first time, how I felt. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I was 15 years old. Okay, what I used to do is I played with a tape recorder. My friends would come over, probably from the time 8th grade on until I got into high school, and we would record these shows on audio cassette. And then it was kind of like a radio show. Now, I never really thought about getting into radio. I always liked TV, so I got into TV in my sophomore year of high school and did morning announcements. And, I talked about that on the last show and what that journey was like. And then as I was talking about this before the show, I said, a month or two before I turned 30 years old, it kind of came to an end. And then my grandma was sick, so I had a number of things going on. And it's now 20 years later that I realize that moment and what it meant to me and the fallout from all of that. And what I really realize in all of this is that I still have what? A choice, okay? So the choice is, do I continue going forward or do I stop? And I've faced that many times, in different shows where it gets to a point where, why am I doing this anymore? What am I getting out of this on a personal level? Because, when you don't get paid for it, you do it because you like it and because it brings value and meaning, and hopefully maybe somebody can learn something from something that I say. So, that's how this show has evolved. And I never thought in a million years that I would just be sitting here by myself talking about different experiences, talking about, the fact that I still have a choice. I have a choice to do things differently every day. And I have a choice to either engage with people or I have the choice to not engage with people. And let's face it, when it comes to politics, money, and religion, it's best not to engage in that. But because it's such and as we can see, watching the news every day, I have never seen this in my life, this level of hatred towards a leader of the world, a leader. I always remembered that being the better person meant that we move beyond our dislike and find our similarities, but that doesn't seem to be happening right now. And something that I heard on a radio from the great Larry Kudlow, who recently suffered a heart attack, and I hope he's doing better. He had a wonderful program on radio, and he used to be on CNBC before he became an economic advisor to the president, which he joined earlier this year. But something that he said resonated with me because he too has worked a program of recovery, having kicked cocaine and alcohol, and having a great radio program. He talked about how he feels today that one of the problems is that we don't have faith. We don't have a spiritual connection. So therefore, it's easy to blame everybody else or blame whomever, like really the decisions that a president makes, how does it affect me on a daily basis? All right, if I'm part of a political party or not part of a political party. My political process is when I go and vote. And now I'm voting people out. I don't care who it is. You got 2 terms. If you don't figure it out in that time, bye-bye. And I think that's really important to realize that the power that we have. It's always nice to blame others and say, or put it onto someone else and say, you know what, I think we should have term limits. Okay, well, let's have term limits. Let's talk to our friends and to our brethren and whomever and go and vote that person out of office or vote for them again if that's what we believe in. And unfortunately, the political talk has become very nasty. And we hear about it nothing but every day. So what I've done in the last week or so is I quit listening to talk radio because I want to keep my side of the street clean and not have any resentments. But we'll see how that works. So as we talk about keeping our side of the street clean, I think it's really important when we look at family relations, okay? Because sometimes mom has been overbearing, sometimes dad has been non-existent, or whomever. Maybe it's our husband, maybe it's our wife. And we get caught up in how they're thinking and what they believe, instead of saying, you know what, maybe I gotta focus on me a little bit. Even though I'm in a relationship, I have to think about me too. It's not just thinking about the other person, because this is what I always say. I have my life with someone, and I have my life outside of that relationship. And I think it's really important, and especially when we're in recovery, that we have our relationship with each other, and that we're developing ourselves outside of that. That when we come together, that we have new experiences, hope, desire, whatever, that we can bring and build on what we're doing. But I'm single, so I really can't talk about that right now. By choice. But I think it's really important to think about those things, because as I start getting angry about listening to certain stuff, I say, guess what, Greg? You gotta focus on keeping your side of the street clean. What do I mean by that? Well, I think there's a certain amount of insanity that comes in family relationships. When somebody goes and gets help, and when I say get help, it means getting help and doing the work. It's saying that I'm powerless and that I need something. I need to believe in something that's greater than myself. I need to move beyond this point in time. And unfortunately, what I found in my own life is that a lot of these personal family relationships were holding me back because I assumed the role. Okay, years later, I ended up moving in with my sister after some issues in my life. And if I didn't have my sister, I don't know what I would have done. But what I realized in that time, not only being grateful that she was there for me, I also realized that, you know what, I have nothing in common with this individual anymore. And that they think of me in certain terms. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're completely negative terms, but they're not kind of the terms that I would be, that I personally would like to be treated or known for. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is that I think that when we go back to old relations after we change or we're in the process of changing, those relationships change. And when people are not working on their own issues, it can kind of get in the way of me working on my own issues, right? Because people bring us back to where they know us instead of where we're going. And again, an individual thinker is a threat to groupthink. Now, what do I mean by that? I've said it before on the show. The individual that thinks for themselves is a threat to the group because they're outside of it. So what do bullies do? Bullies kind of get together and they, and they kind of go after that outcast. And I'm not saying that a person that necessarily is independent in their thinking is an outcast, but it is kind of an outcast kind of way. But if I'm keeping my side of the street clean, I don't really care what people think. Why? Because I'm not going to be upset by other people's stupidity and ways of thinking. And maybe some of my thinking is stupid, but I don't think so. I think I try to use as much logic as possible, but sometimes people are not logical or illogical, as Dr. Spock used to say. You are illogical, Captain. So in keeping that side of the street clean, which we're not seeing in the media because everybody's pointing fingers, it's this one. It's saying, you know what? I got to do something in order to remain sane and remain in my serenity. Because if I don't have that, what do I have? I have resentments. And as I get into resentments, it's something that I can fall into back habits over, fall back into bad habits. A visit to mom. All right, my parents my parents are passed away. Okay, my parents passed away years ago. And I don't have that issue. And as morbid as it sounds, my sister at one time would laugh about it. Well, at least we don't have to take care of aging parents. I said, but wouldn't it be nice if mom and dad were still alive? But they've been gone so long that we don't really have that frame of reference and cannot really relate to people that are in that situation of caring for their parents that they loved. We had a lot of issues with our father. And when he passed away, those issues are still there. That's one of the things that I tried to work on in keeping my side of the street clean. So as we get together with family at holidays, it's funny the things that come up. And so this last year, I decided to get together over Christmas instead of self-isolating to keep my sanity. And it reminded me of why I don't go for Christmas dinner. Because you know what? It inevitably turned back to stories from my past that I'm not very proud of, that everybody has a laugh over. And I'm like, and what I learned in that is that it takes the attention off of that individual. See, if they're talking about me, they're not talking about themselves, right? But if I'm keeping the side of my side of the street clean, it doesn't matter, because I'm not going to have a resentment. And I can speak up for myself and say, you know what, I'm glad. It's like, I'm glad, and not being sarcastic, I'm glad that you find humor in a period of my life that I was very ashamed and had a lot of guilt and wasn't right. I'm glad you find entertainment in that. But for me, it wasn't entertaining. It was very painful. And I really don't want to talk about it anymore. And then you risk what? Going against the group and saying, I have boundaries and I really don't want to talk like this anymore. Oh, well, you've really changed. Yeah, I've changed. I have respect for myself. And I don't really need to relive an uncomfortable time because you think it's funny. It's not funny. So anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about getting together with family, keeping our side of the street clean, and what to do when we run into that difficult moment. I'm Greg, you're on The Greg Show, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you. Welcome back to The Greg Struss Show. I'm Greg Struss. I have to say it 3 times, right? In the old shows, I would just say at the beginning, and that's it, and whatever. And you can tune into the Greg Struss Show every Wednesday night here on Comcast Xfinity, Channel 19 in the west side of Chicago, covering 65 communities. So thank you for tuning in. If you're watching us on television, of course, on youtube.com with the search words, The Greg Struss Show. We were talking about getting away, I was talking about getting together with family over the holiday. And of course, how that plays into keeping my side of the street clean. Now, we keep coming back to that, and you're probably saying, Greg, you're getting ridiculous with this, but I have a point here, and hopefully I will make it. So how do choices come into that? Now, the choice I could have made is, you know what? I know what they're going to talk about, and I really don't feel like doing it, so I'm not going to attend Christmas dinner this year. All right, I've done that several times. So this time I attended Christmas dinner, and it came up again, and I was very kind and to the point. And I could have said something to my sister, well, when she said, well, the drunk Greg used to be a lot more fun than the sober Greg, because the sober Greg is really uptight. And I would hear this, okay? Now, a month in, 2 months in, 3 months in of not having a drink, okay? Some people struggle with that. I fortunately did not struggle with that because I reached a point in my life where something needed to change. And it changed, and I made the steps, all right? And as long as I don't go back to that, I'm gonna be okay. Now, some will say, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, you know what? As I got well, what did I get? I got a sense of personal awareness, all right? Personal awareness, self-awareness, is something that's very powerful, yet something that's very simple. Because in self-awareness, I now, got to have that little voice saying, the adult talking in my ear and saying, you know what, that's not a good choice. Or you're doing the right thing for you. Some people might say it's selfish, but you're taking care of yourself. Because in that dysfunction, we take certain risks that aren't good for us. Not good for our psyche, maybe not be good for our health, not good for our emotional health, what have you, all right? So I don't want to go back to that. So what do? How do I maintain any kind of relationship with family if all they do is bring up the past? Well, I can have a conversation and say, you know what? I really don't want to talk about this anymore. And if we're going to talk about this all the time, then I'm not going to come around. And then that's kind of hardlining it. I don't want to be a big baby like that. But I'm just like, I came to the point of where, you know what? I'm not less than you. I'm not less than you. I made some mistakes along the way. And you know what? What happens when I get into that isolation and think about that stuff, it starts to occupy my mind and say, well, maybe I am a failure. And I'm not. And I haven't had that for a while because why? I became self-aware to realize that, you know what? This isn't working for me. Oh, who doesn't talk to their family or who doesn't do this? A lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people. I never related to it, but they say it's a growing epidemic. It was in Psychology Today, where they're saying one of the pandemics, okay, greater than an epidemic, are siblings that are not having relations with each other anymore because there's a lack of respect. And so when there's a lack of respect, what am I supposed to do? Isn't that the meaning of insanity? When I start stepping back thinking that I, do the same thing over and over again, wanting to achieve a different result, and I still walk away feeling the same way? Well, if I'm the only person that's changed, and it's not to say that maybe in their eyes I haven't changed for the better, but I know I've changed for the better because I feel better, I'm doing better things, and I'm moving ahead. And it's not a good thing to say, well, you know what? I don't talk to my siblings. It's not something that I want to share with the world. I'm sharing it here because we talk about these things. So essentially I am sharing it with the world. But I'm here to let you know that it's okay if it interferes with my own progress, okay? Sometimes people hold us back, and those people that love us the most hold us back because they feel threatened or feel that I'm gonna be more successful than they are, or that I'll make more money, or that I'll do something. And I got tired of it, and that's where I'm at. And I'm not ashamed of myself. I go through moments where I'm like, I feel kind of ashamed that I don't talk to my sisters more often. But I've gotten to the point where, you know what, I don't have kids, I'm not married, I don't have a relationship, and there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. Because I just came to realize that, you know what, I get too invested in the wrong things. And I need to get invested in the right things. And the right things are me being right, me being right with me and me being right with the world and not having those resentments. So so what am I going to do? Am I going to go into situations where I continue to have resentments, walk away and wondering, well, what's wrong with me? I don't need to question myself like that anymore. That awareness and that sense of awareness gives me, and the faith, keeps me even. And if I'm talking about certain things that are important and, and making sense of it, I think it's okay. And that's how I've done it. Now, some people will say they go to meetings and do it. That's fine. That's what people do. But don't be critical of me that I don't, or that once in a while I do. There's different ways for different people. There is no one way. Some people find faith. Some people, and that, let's face it, faith is something that's missing from our daily lives. It used to be that if you talk to someone that didn't believe in God, or Buddha, or whomever, oh, there's something wrong with you. Oh, an atheist? I have a friend who is an atheist. And she went to Christian school her whole life. And I remember having a conversation. We were in our 30s at the time, and she says, I don't believe anymore. I just think it's, what was I to say? I respect that she doesn't believe. I do, I respect that. And we have to respect people that think differently than us. And that's what's missing. We don't have a lot of respect anymore in this society we're in. And it comes down to a basic humility and respect. And if I don't have respect for myself, how am I going to have respect for another? And in keeping my side of the street clean, I don't have to have those resentments. Now, am I perfect at this? Absolutely not. But this is something that kind of came up that I've been thinking about as I keep reading stories about the hatred towards President Trump or towards every single thing that's going on. And I'm thinking to myself, why are we spending so much time, television time, radio time, talking about this, instead of coming up with solutions? So when I go into a situation and there's a problem, how many people do you work with that'll say, you know what, this place is just horrible, and I don't like working here, and they need to do this. Okay, well, is that really a solution? No, a solution is sitting down and coming up with an idea, and it involves communication and saying, I think this is how we can change this to make it better. Doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to engage it, but at least I'm trying to participate in making a change, okay? I've been called a change agent, not because I carry 50s and have singles, but a change agent, somebody that introduces change. Change is very important, and if I'm not changing, I'm not growing. If I'm not growing, I'm staying the same. And sometimes we outgrow certain situations. We outgrow people, and you know what? People outgrow me too. And it hurts when that happens. I had a friend for years, and I haven't talked to him in a long time. I think we kind of outgrew each other. Doesn't mean that I don't love him, doesn't mean that I don't consider him a friend still, but it just got to be a lot. And today, Greg's more important. Greg's more important to himself. I'm gonna be like Regis Philbin. Well, Regis doesn't want to do this. So anyway, I think it's important, and we talk about a lot of that stuff on the show. Anyway, you can watch, well, we already talked about watching the Greg Struss Show, but if you want to write us, you can write me at the Greg Struss Show, gstrussman@gmail.com. I love hearing from you. Questions about recovery, questions about life, questions about anything, really. But that's, everybody has a different journey, and I think we have to be respectful. One of the things that I learned early on is that you can learn a lot from a dummy. And just because someone might be less educated than you are or than I am, doesn't mean that there's not a life lesson to be learned. I don't think anyone is better than anyone. And I think once we move beyond that, I think we're going to be better as a society and as people. But we're so